I just gave my smart home eyes and a brain, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. Is this the cutting edge of home automation, or did I just make a big mistake?
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Let me show you what I've done. Hey, this is Doug from High Tech Life, helping you live your best high-tech life and hopefully helping you save a little bit of money, a little bit of time while you do that. So if you're into that sort of thing, click like and subscribe down below. I've got something really exciting to show you today. It's this convergence of the worlds between home automation and modern AI systems. And the developments that have just happened in the last few weeks are just mind-blowing in terms of the possibilities overall. So what's happened is, historically, in the home automation platform I use, Home Assistant, there was some integration between that platform and some of those LLMs, the ChatGPT, those types of platforms in the world. Usually through something like this, one of these little home automation speakers, and something where I could just conversationally talk to it and say, hey, turn the lights on, turn the lights off, and it would do it. Home Assistant would see that and say, I know how to process that. But then if I would ask it, what's the tallest building in the world? It would say, I don't know how to do that, so let me send that request out to the internet, collect a response, and then just read that back to you. And the integration works really well. It's kind of a neat feature, but it was kind of mostly just like, okay, what am I going to do with that? Well, now the integrations that just came out in the 2025.8, the August 2025 release of Home Assistant, are amazingly powerful. Basically, what you're able to do now is take information from your home automation system, ask the LLM to analyze it, and then provide you an analysis back on that overall. So let me just turn this into some real-world examples to kind of make it obvious. I can have my system go and take an occasional image of my front doorstep and say, describe how many packages you see on this front doorstep and only give me a numeric response. Don't have any other extraneous comments in there. And it will just simply reply with 0 or 1 or 2. And then that can go into a variable and trigger other automations and routines. So for example, if the package count goes from 0 to 1, send a notification saying, hey, there's a package at your door. Another example might be a simple yes or no type of consideration. So if you have a routine where you're sort of setting your house ready for the evening, turn all the lights down, things like that, you might be able to say, okay, when we start this process, take an image from the garage camera, take a look and see, is the garage door open or closed? And just give me a true or false response back on that one. And then based on what you get there, no, it's not closed, it can send an alert or something and say, hey, maybe you want to shut the garage door before you go to bed here overall. The possibilities on this are mind-boggling, and I actually think this is going to help me with one particular home automation use case that has been a thorn in my side for a number of years. So let me walk you through how we set this up, and let me show you how to put it to use. So let's walk through it. Okay, so this is how this all started coming together with the 2025.8 release in Home Assistant, so August 2028. And they've added this new capability to integrate AI into your workflows using this AI task function. And as I said here, this allows you to attach a file or camera input and just ask the AI what's happening, what it sees, and then it can give you the answer back in sort of free-form text, or you can have it be a structured value, and then you can store this in your system and maybe use other automations or triggers or use that to control other types of things going on. So you can read about this here. I've got the link for these notes down below. And what this was somewhat based off of was somebody who had gone through and said, okay, well, I'm going to have this system take a look from a camera in the chicken coop and just tell me how many chickens are in the coop based off the images that it saw in there and teaching it the interpretation. So this is really amazingly powerful overall. So I'm going to walk through the setup here in real time. So I might fast forward through a few things and come back and replay some of this if you need to get a closer look on it. But I'm setting this up for the first time, and I've got a very specific use case that I'm going to try to apply this to overall. So this is going to be my use case here. This is a poorly lit image of a fuel gauge on a liquid propane tank that we have out on our property outside of our barn here. And it's something that I just need to check every now and then and see, okay, do we have enough fuel? And it's just, if I don't have enough fuel, I call the company, they come back and they fill it up. But it's the one thing in my house that I've just not been able to do anything for automation for. So what I'm going to try to do is integrate this AI LLM solution through Google and basically tell it to read the gauge and provide me with a numeric value. And then when that value gets down below a certain point, I can just go and have it send me an alert to my phone or something like that. So this image is just coming off of a Blink camera that's really just Velcroed to the lid over the top of this. So it doesn't get a lot of light, and the Blink camera is pretty close to the gauge. So there's probably a focus issue. So if I can make this work, I can make pretty much anything work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually describe the gauge in a little bit more detail to the AI to give it a little bit of a hint here overall. But you should be able to do this to have it go and count much more obvious things like how many packages are on my front doorstep, or how many cars are in the driveway or the garage, or something like that. So if I can make this work, we can make a lot of things work overall. So let's go ahead, and the first thing that you need to do is you're going to need to go and create the integration to go ahead and, let's see here, I need to go into the integrations, and I need to integrate the Google Generative AI integration, and I have an API key already. So I put that in there, hit submit on that. And now we have these devices created. So Gemini 2.5 Flash, device name Google AI Task, AI Conversation. So these would be for a number of things you can do here. And then I typically have an area called Cloud for just anything that's sort of internet connected that I just put these things into overall, but this is not necessary. And now the Google Generative AI is set up on this system. So it's not doing anything yet. So now I have the integration for Google's Generative AI. Now I have the integration for my Blink cameras were already in here overall. So from that perspective, I've got the image inputs. That's what you're seeing right here coming in from the Blink cameras. So now that I have this in here, what I should be able to do is I should be able to go through and do a test on this. If you need to read the documentation, I've got the links for that down below. This is how you go and you integrate things here, and all the details. There's a lot of additional information on how you might go and set that up. And setting up your AI keys in Google's AI Studio here is simply just going and creating this API key overall, defining it for one of your applications. I had already created one of these a little while ago. Once all this is done, I should be able to go to the developer tools over on the side menu on the left here, and then I should be able to go and say, here it is, generate task. Okay, so this is starting to work. So the task name that I'm going to put into here is, I'll say YouTube video test task. And then for the instructions, what I need to do is I need to go, this is the prompt basically. So this is, if you're using ChatGPT or anything like this, you give it a prompt and you have to kind of, in some cases, think about what it is you want to say. I could put a simple prompt in here and just say, hey, tell me what this style reads. And maybe I would get the right answer, maybe I wouldn't. But since I know that image is already a little bit blurry, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it a little bit of help. So I'm going to come up with a prompt here that gives it a good nudge in terms of understanding exactly what it's looking at and how to interpret that overall. So let me go ahead and put my prompt in here. Okay, and so here's my prompt. And basically I described what it is. It's a camera pointed at a fuel tank, a liquid propane tank, that the display is sort of the percent it's full. And I asked it to only return a number and no other information overall. And then I noted that the major markers on the gauge are not 0 to 100, which one might expect with a percent kind of gauge. The major markers are at 10 in the lower left, and then 20, 30, 40, 60. So I'm having to explain quite a bit for it. And again, this is just because I think that this is something where this blurry camera image would potentially go and mess with it otherwise. But in a case where you had a much clearer image, I think you'd have an easier time of this. Then you go to the attachments down here. And for Pick Media, you're going to go ahead and select a camera. And so I'm going to select the pole barn here. And this is where the fuel tank is located. And then let's try it. Fingers crossed here. Let's see what this says. No entity ID provided and no preferred entity set. Entity ID. Entity ID to run the task on. My bad. I didn't tell it. Use Google AI. Okay. One more time. Fingers crossed. Good sign. Not getting an error immediately. And the check mark shows 46. Now, looking at the readout on this gauge in a much clearer, sharper photo, I would say that the reading is actually 35. So this didn't quite get me to where I wanted on this because of that image quality. So I've got a few different options for this overall. I could go and try to get a better camera in there, take that blink camera out, put something in there in its place. I could try to kind of work around with the prompt a little bit more, although I thought this was pretty helpful on that. Let's go ahead and let's say I'm okay with that 46% that we got here, this 46 that we got as an answer. Now what I want to do is I want to build an automation that's going to run certain, points of the day. For my use case here, I won't run this overnight because I have a feeling this bad image, even in daylight, would be even worse at night. So I'm going to go through and say, all right, let's go through and update the image, and then we're going to go and read it, and then we're going to store this value, this 46, into a variable here. And that's going to be really, really powerful when we do this, because then you can start to build all those other automations on there. You can say, okay, if this gets below 25 or 30%, send an alert saying, hey, maybe it's time we go through and fill this. You could make a chart and you can log it over time. So we need to go through and we need to figure out how to move this from just what we've got in the developer tools here into an actual value in an automation. So let's do that. Okay, so I know that the AI, even though it's reading a number that is a little bit off from what I would prefer to have, I know that it is giving me a numeric value. So I can work on the camera, or I can work on better ways to describe what it's looking at here and try to improve that over time. But now what I need to do is I need to go and figure out where I'm going to store this value over time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a helper on this overall. And we go ahead and create a helper. We're going to create a number helper. And we're going to say percent propane tank level. And we'll just use a general tank here. And the minimum value on this is going to be 0. That's probably technically correct. If I look at that image, it probably technically does go down to 0. And looks like it maybe goes up to 90. So I'll just go ahead and I'll say 0 and 90, because I don't think we should ever get a reading outside of that range. Nothing I need to go in terms of anything else here. And I'm going to create that. And then once I do that, now what I need to do is I need to start creating the automation that will do all of this. So I'm going to create an automation here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to say, actually, don't want to do it off of a particular time pattern. Time pattern would have worked good if I wanted to go and just every hour or something have it repeat. But in reality, I probably want this to go at about 3 p.m. when it's going to be the brightest here most days. Maybe make that 2 p.m. And say when the time is equal to 2 p.m., then what we're going to do is we're going to ask Blink to update the image. And so that was our pole barn camera that has that. We're going to give it about 30 seconds to generate the image. Actually, I'll just do a minute here. We'll give it about a minute to grab the image and update it. Let all the Amazon cloud things do what they need to do on this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a task. And just type in ai.task and you can say generate data. And so now this is what we were using the developer tools before. where we just sort of manually prompted it. We got that 46 result back. This now will go through and run this as a part of this automation. So the task name is going to be check propane tank level. My instructions are what I put in before. The entity that we're going to use for this is the Google AI task entity. The attachment, we need to pick that camera again. And we just go to the pole barn camera. And then the response variable. So the response variable is basically where the automation will store whatever you get back. Now, if it gives you a big wordy description, because that's what AIs want to do sometimes, you would have a hard time putting that into a number helper like I just noted here. But I'm going to ask it just to give me a number. I don't want anything else to come back. So if it's doing its job properly, we should hopefully get that. And so I will just say propane tank level reading. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it another 30 seconds to just let the AI process this. So it sends the image out, the AI's got to go and do what it does. It seemed like it took 3 to 5 seconds when I tested it manually before, so 30 seconds should hopefully be enough time for this. So right now our sequence is update the image on the camera, give it a minute to do that, ask for the AI to generate a task and then store that in propane tank level reading, wait 30 seconds for the response to come back, and then what I need to do, okay, so I created that as a number helper and that is actually not the right one. I need a counter helper, so I'm going to say % propane tank level. Let's create another tank here. Again, minimum value looked like that could be 0 to 90, and I'll just set the initial value to 0 so that we'll know it got populated. And then we're going to go back to our automations here. All right, so every day when it's equal to 2 p.m., it will run through these. What I also do sometimes is I create very, very simple triggers that I can fire off manually so that I can run through a bunch of these. So we'll do that in a little bit here. All right, so delaying for 30 seconds after asking the LLM to create the image. And so now what I want to do is I want to set the value of a counter, propane tank level, and okay, so this is how we go and this is how we tie everything together. So when you have the AI go and generate its tasks, give you the reading, it's giving me a reading that's a little bit high, it's going to store, the automation is going to store that response in this variable here, propane tank level reading. That variable is basically going to exist only so as long as this automation is running. So what I need to do is I then need to go and store this somewhere else. And so this is where we go through and do that. So this % propane tank level, that was the helper counter that I created. And what we're doing here is we're saying I want to take this propane tank level reading, the response from the AI. You have to put the .data here, this little vertical bar, and then because it's a numeric value, we're going to take it as an integer. If this was a text response, you would just leave that off. And we do all of these things together. This should give me a full reading on this if I go back over to my page here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a way to manually trigger this. I have a Home Assistant voice speaker here. And it's got a button on it, and so if I can just go to playing, that way I can go and manually sort of trigger this whole sequence. Let me go ahead and press the button. And now that I see my trigger actually triggered, so now we have about a 90-second or more time frame for which we've triggered the camera update on the barn. We're going to wait 1 minute after that. We're going to ship that data off to the Google Gemini AI. After that, Google Gemini AI gets its opinions on what the reading is based on how we described our prompt. We're going to give it 30 seconds to formulate its thoughts and provide it back to us. And then we're going to go and we're going to set that variable in our dashboard here. So in about 90 seconds, I should be able to go into here and refresh this page and have some sort of numeric reading here. So let's see if this updates. And there we go. Now I'm getting a percent propane tank level of 24. So before I got 46, now I got 24. This would all probably be pretty easily solvable if I just had a better camera image for it to work with here. So I'm probably going to let this go for a little while, and then we can build a history graph item on here by just going and adding in a history graph, and we'll just say our propane percent tank level. And now we've got a value of 24 here as we start to go and make that chart's first entry. And then over time, I'm going to leave this running, see how this does for a few days, see if it fires off every single day at this time we wanted here. I'm going to go ahead and just disable my manual trigger. So now the only thing that will trigger this off is when the time is 2 p.m. and it will follow through this whole sequence, put that value in there, and once a day I will get a new reading on that propane tank. And then I got to figure out how am I going to go and fix the problem of it just doesn't have a very accurate reading overall, and probably going to go and put a better camera on that one. Hey, I'm back. So I've had a little bit of time to work on this, and ultimately I'm gonna have to go and put a better camera out onto that propane tank. I tried to give it different prompts, and it's still just the readings are a little bit fuzzy on that overall. So, but I went ahead and I tried a few other things with the solution since then, and it's just amazing what you can do with this. So for example, this is a view inside of our garage. There's a camera in there, and I just said, hey, count how many vehicles you can see, or count whether the door is open or closed down here. So, and interestingly, so I set this up at night. It was kind of dark on the camera. It was in infrared mode. So the next morning I thought, okay, it was actually reading 2 cars in the garage, even though it looked like this with the garage door down overnight. And so I thought, okay, when I have daylight and we'll run this again. And then it said, there's 3 cars. Now here's the thing. So if you actually stare back off into the image here, I just asked it, tell me how many cars you see. These cars over in my neighbor's driveway, there are actually 2 vehicles here, and it appropriately recognized that. So the vehicle that's clearly in the garage, plus 2 that it could see that were in the neighbor's driveway. So then I went in and I fixed up the prompt and I said, no, only count the vehicles that are actually in the driveway on overall. And then obviously the open status in terms of, you know, at night, I can have the AI go and take a look at this and say, okay, yeah, you're going to bed, but it looks like your garage door is open. Hey, do you maybe want to go and close that before you go to bed and leave that open all night overall? So that use case worked out really, really well, and that's been working flawlessly. The other one that's been working really well for us is I built in a way for the AI to go and tell me who, you know, describe the person that just came to the front door. So if I'm away from my house and somebody comes up to the front door, we have a basic Ring stick-up camera. It's 10 years old. It's not terribly sophisticated in any way, but I just made it AI smart through this because it creates an image in home automation, the front door last image. And so if that updates, I just have the automation script go in and say, and do the same thing we just did before with passing the propane reading over. Okay, here's an image. I'm going to describe to you what I want in that image, and then you give me a response back. Now, in this case, it's giving me text, and this comes through to my watch and my phone pretty much in real time as well. A little bit of delay, obviously, for all the pieces to kind of go. But what you can see here is, as it's described, I said, you know, tell me if you see a person, tell me if you see multiple peoples, tell me if they're adults or children, tell me if they're wearing uniforms or if they're carrying anything. I gave it a lot of prompting to kind of say, hey, here's the things I want to know, and I'll provide that prompt down below in the notes here. But you can see what it came back with this image. It said there's 1 adult male. They're wearing a blue helmet with white stars, dark blue jacket over a light shirt, and khaki pants, and they appear to be adjusting their sleeve, but they're not carrying anything. And that's a pretty apt description of what this is here. What I would do with that, I don't know. But then we had another one just a couple of days ago, one adult female in a white and black striped shirt, black pants, and black shoes. She has a black sling bag and is carrying a black object, possibly a laptop or a tablet, and a gray bottle overall. So this is pretty cool. I can also sort of just have it, my automations can send me the little thumbnail images as well, but I think this is amazing. This is a way that you can go and add some smarts to your home. So I could have this checking my front doorstep and saying, hey, you have a new package out here. You had 0 packages before, and I just checked your images again, maybe a couple of times a day, and now there seems to be something on your step, so maybe you want to go and grab that overall. So the possibilities on this are just incredible. And again, this is being done with completely unsophisticated cameras. The Blink camera that I use for the propane tank reading was $50 from Amazon or at Best Buy or your local electronics store. And the Ring camera that I used for these front step automations, I think I bought it in 2016. I think it's 9 years old. It is not terribly sophisticated in any way, shape, or form, but it will create that image. And then once that image has updated in Home Assistant, I just send it off to the Gemini LLM with that prompt. I'll include my prompt down below so that you can try this as well. And then you've got this information. So this is just unbelievable stuff. I'm going to have a ton of fun figuring out all the additional things I might be able to do with this. So I will be creating some more videos on this. So if you want to see some of those when those come out, go ahead and hit like and subscribe down below so you can keep up to date on this. And we'll see you next time.